Also, the site work. Again, as previously mentioned, we implemented parking. For some people, they don't like to implement it, but it is something that homeowners do look for when they're looking for property. So we used a lot of the permeable surfaces, not to mention in the common areas for the residents. We have green space, there was landscaping, as well as stormwater management areas. So, not to mention the water meters we have on the outside. Again, trying to make that neighbor competitiveness. As we said before, on the dashboard that's outside, where you can kind of rank and see how much energy and how much water you're utilizing. So to kind of sum it all up, like I said, our total cost is 9.3, almost 9.4 million. To make you understand what does that mean, a typical residential unit is anywhere between, let's say, 115, large scale, up to about $200 per square foot. So that means you're looking in the range of about maybe $275K per unit. And as you can see where we are, it does cost a lot to implement the sustainable attributes and to make it net zero, but understanding the life cycle cost and the return rate on your investment outweighs that cost differential you're looking at.
So to get back to the financial piece from the developer side, here again, we put together this team because we really wanted to test what would a developer like Mikasa do. We used a DHCD pro forma, so we even knew what they would target in terms of a per unit cost. And one of the most effective ways to make lower the barrier to home ownership, the entry to home ownership, is to create what is called a low and limited equity co-op. In this case, because there was a large tract of land, we essentially made a land trust. And the reason that that's essential in this type of development is that you end up wanting to make sure that the systems that you put in place stay with the property. So it's almost a collective system here. Geothermal had to take the entire site up. And then within that land trust structure, the houses themselves became a limited equity co-op. And that essentially means that the homeowner does not have to put up a lot of money to buy into the project. And then when they sell, they can't sort of have the property go up in value and then take the profit with them. It actually stays with the project. And then in addition, some of the systems that we were looking at and the way that we were thinking long term in terms of payback, we had to create a taxable entity because some of what you end up using are tax credits and the nonprofit can't use that. So for the geothermal and the PVs, these systems needed that additional layer of kind of, I would say, bureaucracy, but so we set it up that way. And here again, relatively complex, but not uncommon, and it made sense for us to make the whole thing work. And then, as April referred, we have this whole pot of money that we need to create the project, and so we did due diligence in terms of initial cost and doing some cost cutting. And then we looked for, literally, Ellen thought about what bankers would put their money into the project. And you'll see the Housing Production Trust Fund. So when I referred to $90 million previously that DC was committing to low-income housing, the Housing Production Trust Fund is one of these other sources that nonprofits look to in terms of making projects, making the balance sheet work.
Great. And then because we created these separate entities, we tried to really break apart and leverage on the appropriate support mechanisms as much as possible. So really looking at taking only the most fundamental elements of the housing and financing those through housing programs. Then we looked at the energy and water components and had a discussion with the DC PACE program to figure out how we could really just strip out every element that contributed to the overall building performance and find a separate way. If we couldn't reduce the actual capital overlay, we tried to reduce the cost of capital through some of the innovative findings and programs. And because we did capitalize those assets ourselves, rather than through like a third-party agreement, like a Solar City kind of thing, the development itself owns the solar panels. We had to achieve zero runoff, so that allowed us to create stormwater credits that we were then able to capitalize to create cash flow for the assets that we had to create. And so we looked at these things that would be pure cost items, tried to minimize the cost, and then make them into actual sources of income as well. So that includes the sales of SRECs and solar energy, stormwater credits, and we oversized the geothermal system, and we figured we could actually sell that efficiency to the surrounding neighborhood. So that's kind of the scale jumping concept. And this kind of goes into some detail. I actually went into the property tax records and created a profile of the whole neighborhood's energy use and tried to figure out what the financials would be of servicing some of that with our excess capacity. And then talk a little bit about it.
So the workforce development, again, as was mentioned earlier, we did make our outreach to the community to understand their concerns. In a community like this, they wanted to have direct involvement. They wanted to make sure it stayed in-house. So by saying that, our goal would be to set up a meeting as a follow-up to understand people's individual skills. How can we utilize them to put back into this community and, of course, be proud of that. Not to mention just being able to utilize some of the space across from the site and utilize the commercial sheds as working space as far as lay down and panelization and being able to train the people of the community so that, again, they can put that back into their own community and see the fruits of their own labor. Not to mention the space that we would be utilizing when we're done with the project, having that being turned over to the community to, again, utilize that space and be livable and or workable environment.
And just finally, here again, some of the spaces that we created on the site, we definitely saw potential for workforce development, work training within the green economy. So in this kind of holistic thinking, not only about the residents and housing, but also job creation.
Good evening. I knew we had some stiff competition. I didn't realize how stiff that competition was. It was extremely impressive performance. I feel very humbled to be up here, sitting in between the winner and the second runner-up. My name is Will Tays. I'm a principal with Tays Warren Architects. I'm here with Charles Warren, my business partner. We're I would say, the architecture side of the equation. We're up here also with Ryan Moody of Moody Landscape Architecture, and finally Chris French of District Homes. District Homes is a boutique home builder of sustainable, future-enabled homes, and I think that Chris's presence on the team really helped us push the boundaries of what we envisioned for this site. So, as you can see behind me, this is our vision for the site, and this is a Saturday morning. If you were to go out there on a Saturday morning, as we had this past Saturday, you would see a completely bleak landscape. You would see refuse, you would see an empty field, you would see a road that's vastly oversized for what it's intended to serve. And I think that in our initial site visits, we're done in that kind of late winter environment. And we were really struck by the emptiness of the site. And I think that one of the areas that we really were interested in focusing on was not just the site, but really the street, Dick Street in front of the site. And I think that we saw a unique opportunity here to not only activate the site by virtue of the competition program, but also by rethinking the street, both the site, the street, and the opposite side, as a market. If any of you have been down to Eastern Market, I think the city has a legacy in its history of these urban markets, and those urban markets are both serve to activate public space, but more importantly, perhaps, they serve to feed the population. And so, when we're faced with a project whose one of whose goals is for self-sustainability, creating an economic place to do that is something really critical to us. And for that, that's where we came up with Deanwood Market. And so what you're seeing here is the street that on Saturdays or other days of the week, it could be activated by food trucks, by people selling the vegetables they grew on this site. They could be selling from other parts of Ward 7. So, we really, in a way, our project became a backdrop to this experience, and so I think that both the architecture and the landscape design really reflect that to some degree. So this is our site plan, and I'm going to walk you through it a little bit here. I think that the team before did a great job of giving you a sense of what the surrounding context is. But we have, here is Watts Branch Trail, part of Marvin Gate Park, and there's a connection to a much larger area. And so I think that recognizing and strengthening that connection was a key aspect of what we were doing. There's a whole part of the site here on the south side of Dix that wasn't technically in the product area, and it's encouraging to me that we reached the same conclusions as some of our competitors, and that there's a huge opportunity here. So in our mind, this was an opportunity for future retail, and that some of these structures could be rehabilitated. There's an empty corner here. We envision this as a structure in the future that could then also reinforce that retail, that smaller scale neighborhood retail environment. The alleyway right now does not extend all the way through. I think that was one of the aspects of the site plan that was really important to us, reestablishing DC as a network of streets, but also alleys. And having that connection is something important. Locating that parking discreetly off that alleyway was something important to us. We've got some parallel spaces here. I think where we start to really started thinking about different kinds of exterior space, starting with the great lawn here, where we have a space that we envision for the community at large, not just the residents.